Right, let's start with Brazil 2-0 Serbia. It feels, I mean, it was quite an interesting game to watch there, quite a fun one. Will you start, though, with helping the uninitiated here? Why are Brazil favourites for the tournament, would you say? I mean, because there's plenty of good teams here.
Lots and lots and lots and lots of really good players. Also, lots of fun players who capture the imagination. Brazil are stacked with attacking talent. Obviously, Neymar is the one that everybody knows, and the player around a lot of this tournament, around whom a lot of this tournament is centred, because it's kind of his last chance, really, to collect the award that he's been expected to win. Probably since he was about 16. He's been, ever since he was a teenager, Neymar has been the next force in Brazilian football. And I suppose there's different ways of interpreting his career, but it would feel a little bit underfulfilled, unfulfilled, if he weren't to win the World Cup or the Ballon d'Or, or probably both things, because they generally go together. But around him, there's an extraordinary collection of talent, which makes him a clear favourite, especially after Argentina's debacle against Saudi Arabia. Yeah. So I think we saw some of it tonight. Neymar came into the game as the story. Richarlison scored probably what will end up being one of the goals of the tournament. Lucas Paqueta is in there. Casemiro is in there. Thiago Silva is still there after all this time. Alexandro. And also, for people who don't watch a lot of Brazil, I think you can gauge an awful lot just by saying that they're able to bring off to bring on Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus off the bench into the game. That speaks to a level of strength and depth which not a lot of countries have at this tournament. And actually, I mean, maybe with the exception of Spain, they're probably one of the only favourites, now that we've finished the first round of games, to actually exceed expectations in terms of level of performance. I think they were excellent. Really, really well.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, they beat Serbia 2-0 today. Serbia maybe didn't play brilliantly, but they're a tough team to beat. Thinking about the other big teams in this tournament, Germany, Argentina losing their opening games, England beating an Iran team that certainly weren't at their best, Spain obviously hammering Costa Rica, who were woeful, as JJ described yesterday. I don't know, John, do you feel like off the first game, Brazil kind of... I mean, they do look like favourites, don't they?
It's hard to say, I think, because they were playing against a low block for a large portion of this game. So it's hard to say how representative that will be of games later on in the tournament. And I think there's been a few funny games so far, namely Germany. The first half of the Germany game, I thought Germany looked incredible in this half, because they're playing the closest at that point to what I would describe as a domestic style of play. They were looking to possess the ball. They were looking to move it through the thirds. They were looking to generate dangerous moments through manipulating space, and they looked really, really on it. And then obviously they ended up not winning that game. Spain similarly playing a very sort of domestic style of football, and doing really well from it. And I suppose the big question is to what extent is the style of play that you're using in the group stages going to translate into what you're doing in the knockout stages when the rubber hits the road. And that's kind of what I feel like with Brazil. In this game, they had to break down a really stubborn team, and it's hard to tell how that will then translate into them playing against teams who are probably going to be trying to play the same sort of style of football as they are as well. So in the group stages, it's really easy to make snap judgments about how good teams are, but I think it's still too early to be able to do that after just one game from each team.
Still, the last 25 minutes of that game, where Serbia had to step out a little bit, they could not sit in the low block because they were a goal down. They literally took one player out of their defensive structure and just got rinsed, like absolutely rinsed. So I think it's probably fair to deduce that if you do step out against Brazil, they could just bludgeon you. And what was really impressive tonight was, for 65 minutes, they didn't necessarily make too many clear-cut chances. I don't think that they were exactly flowing, but what they did do was just keep a relentless amount of pressure on the opposition, and you are just going to get tired. You will wilt eventually, and when they start to wilt, they bring on Gabriel Jesus, Martinelli, Rodrigo. I mean, how scary is that? So, Vinicius does the first bit, then Rodrigo comes on, takes the baton, does the next bit, and you will not be able to sit there for 90 minutes and defend against Brazil. But if you open up and play aggressively, it just gives them more space. You know
what I really like about that? It's like some of these substitutions, you bring on ready-made combinations from different clubs. So you have the option, if you're Brazil, to play Vinicius and Rodrigo as opposite wide forwards. You can bring on Martinelli and Jesus, who play together for club level. And if you think about the context of European football at the moment, where everyone's exhausted, players are being run to the ground, and also, most importantly, these international sides have had 6 days worth of preparation. If you're able to have that in your team in any form, great. If you're able to have it in reserve, what a luxury that is.
Well, you've got Fred and Casemiro as well, who are now
I
playing
was
together.
going to say they brought on Anthony and Fred. You missed out the biggest
Anthony
combo.
and Fred,
Anthony as well.
absolutely.
Almost a
But
shame McTominay isn't Brazilian.
But these are super important. I was having a conversation with someone earlier today who talked about how the friendlies are the time when you forge these combinations and you develop these understandings within a team which allow you security and trust within a tournament. Brazil have them. They already have them, and they don't need that. And I think that's going to be, I don't know, maybe it's one of the reasons why, even though we've seen quite a lot of probably reserve football, I'd call it, through the first week of the tournament or the first sort of round of games, Brazil already look like they're in a higher gear, which is really interesting.
John, we mentioned a couple of player names already. Can I ask you a question about the starting lineup? It shows what I know, that I was a bit confused why Richarlison started over Gabriel Jesus. Richarlison, obviously, as Seb said, probably scoring maybe the goal of the tournament. But why do you think Tighe made that choice?
Yeah, it's hard to say because actually if you look at the Brazil lineup, it's a very attacking lineup. So we've got it on the board in front of us here. We saw the two wide players for Brazil just hugging the touchline, so pushing really far out wide, trying to get in behind those wing backs because there is space there against the back three. And then with Richarlison as the 9, then you've got two players who are essentially playing as 8s in Neymar and Paquetá. I need to pronounce that properly. Paquetá, yeah. And then only Casemiro is the holding midfielder. It's a really attacking lineup, and I guess this is a really attacking lineup because Tighe expected Serbia to sit quite deep. So the big question is, like, how are you going to break down a lower block? How are you going to come up against these all really tall centre backs? And I guess the options you have are Gabriel Jesus or Richarlison. Now, it may be the case that when you come up against a low block, you might think it would be better to have a player like Gabriel Jesus because he is a bit more of a tight spaces.
He's a wriggler.
Yeah. He's the sort of player who can create something out of nowhere. But interestingly enough, in this game, both of the goals came from Richarlison playing box presence 9 stuff. So being in the right place to tap in the ball off the goalkeeper,
which is not normally how I think about him as a player, and obviously doesn't usually play there for Spurs, given that that's Harry Kane's position. What is it about him that enables him to do that better than Jesus?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned him not playing there for Spurs. That is because they have Harry Kane.
Yeah.
I think that they brought him in because he can replace Harry Kane if Kane isn't available, and I think that it's his better position. He's also a very hard worker as well, and in certain games that will be important if they're going to be looking to press a little bit higher.
If you liked today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you did like it, you might be interested in How to Watch Football, Tifo's illustrated book. It's 52 rules for understanding the beautiful game on and off the pitch, and it is the perfect holiday gift. How to Watch Football is out now in stores and online. See the link in the description to find out more, and thank you for watching today's video.